Okay, boys, what we're going to do today is break down a moment in the film and annotate portions of it to use the film techniques as evidence. Okay, if we're thinking about this scene in particular, which is the moment Eduardo realizes what Mark has done in terms of his involvement in the company, we can see how Fincher explores this idea of betrayal. We can use a number of different techniques here in our own analysis to consider how Fincher explores his ideas. Okay, so let's get straight into it.
Email from Mark telling me to come out for the millionth member party.
What else did the email say?
It said that we had to have a business meeting.
Okay, so what we have here is the first of our techniques. Okay, we're working with focus here, or Fincher's working with focus. We can see that Eduardo is in sharp focus. Okay, we can clearly see him. Mark, on the other hand, is in shallow focus. He's blurred out. I think what Fincher's trying to reflect here is very much how Eduardo feels. He is clear in himself, but at this stage in the film, we are beginning to understand that Mark is not being 100% clear with him. As a result, he is kept in shallow focus. He's blurred, he is unclear to Eduardo. Let's see how this use of focus, or Fincher's use of focus, shifts throughout this scene.
Mark and Shaw had played some kind of revenge stunt on Case Equity, and that Manningham was so impressed that he was now making an investment offer that was hard to turn down. So I went to California, and I went straight to the new offices. I didn't know whether to dress for the party or for the business meeting, so I kind of dressed for both.
Okay, we can see in this shot here that we can focus on the actor's expression. Okay, Eduardo here is seen as optimistic. Okay, he's talking about arriving at the new Facebook offices, in the hopes that, he is understanding that this is the millionth member party, that this is going to be hopefully a celebration. Okay, and I think what Fincher's doing here in giving us this one shot here of Eduardo's optimism is that he is heightening the downfall that he is about to experience. We are empathizing with Eduardo in this moment, and we're about to very quickly see how his mood shifts throughout the scene.
But it didn't matter.
Why not?
Because I wasn't called out there for either one.
What were you called out there for?
Okay, we have another use of focus here. This time it's a shift in focus. As it moves on Mark here from a shallow focus to a sharp focus, his deception is becoming apparent. As Eduardo is about to realize what Mark has done to his involvement in the company, so too this reflection is shown in Fincher's use of the focus here. He is moving from in the backgrounds, dealing behind his back, to very clearly becoming an element of deception. Okay, the betrayal of Mark is reflected in this shift from shallow to sharp focus.
An ambush.
Mr. Sabra, hey.
And we get another one there as well. We get another one of these focus shifts that reflects on these revelations that Eduardo is about to experience at the hands of Mark.
First I thought he was joking, giving me more contracts to sign. But then I started reading. What is this?
Well, as you know, we had some new investors that have come
What
in.
is this?
Okay, what we have here is a use of silence from Fincher. Just want you to note as we watch, following that question from Eduardo, we get an explanation that we don't actually hear. Okay, and silence denotes a feeling of discomfort. When we experience silence, it is unsettling. It's not a comfortable experience to be in. And I think this is reflecting how Eduardo has been kept in the dark, thanks to Mark's own silence. His lack of communication being reflected in this silence as Eduardo experiences or is told exactly what has happened in his absence. He is told exactly how Mark has betrayed him. So we experience this new information in silence, in the same way that Eduardo has been kept in the dark. Once again, we get another shift in focus. This time, it draws our sights on Mark. As Eduardo discovers who's to blame, he looks out into the offices and notices Mark. His sights are purely pointed on the focal point of this shot here. Right in the middle, we see Mark. We do see Sean off to the right-hand side there, an ever-looming presence throughout this film, and a thorn in Eduardo's side. He is still there, but the focal point is clearly on Mark. And we're about to see the intense tonal shift in this scene. And here we have it in that expression. We can already begin to see the rising anger in Eduardo. And this tonal shift is going to change the mood of the scene completely. From an optimistic Eduardo to an angry, violent one. So what I want you to notice in the next shot here is we get a tracking shot that follows Eduardo's walk to Mark, taken from a low angle. And this reflects when we put a character at a low angle, it makes them seem more dominant. It amplifies the aggression that he is feeling. Yet another technique we can latch onto here. Okay, the use of a tracking shot and a low angle to reflect Eduardo's changed sense of tone or mood in this particular scene. He's becoming more dominant. He's becoming a more powerful figure in their friendship.
Mark! Mark!
He's wired in.
Sorry?
He's wired in.
Is he?
Yes.
How about now?
So we get quite a violent example of his anger. But again, if we're focusing on the technique here, this shot reflects this sense of dominance. It continues this tonal shift that we've had in this scene. Okay, in this frame we can see that the low angle keeps Eduardo as the dominant powerful figure. He is in a position of power over the top of a weaker Mark.
No, you're still wired in? You issued 24 million new shares of stock.
You were told that if new investors
How
came
much
along...
We get it again here, this same sense of framing, the way in which Fincher has chosen to position his actors. Despite Sean's presence there, that ever-looming presence, Eduardo is choosing to ignore that. His focus is clearly on Mark here. So despite Sean's presence, Eduardo remains the dominant figure in the shot. He is beginning to take charge of his role in the company that little bit more. In a violent way, certainly, but again, we see Mark here as the weaker figure of the three.
How much were your shares diluted? How much were his?
What was Mr. Zuckerberg's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Mr. Moskowitz's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Sean Parker's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Peter Thiel's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
And what was your ownership share diluted down to?
0.03%.
Okay, boys, what we have here is Fincher's use of screenplay. Okay, his use of repetition, it wasn't, in reference to all of the other stakeholders apart from Eduardo. We've got to remember that these are the two men that started the company. And sadly, it is Eduardo who is the one to be betrayed here. So everybody else is periphery, but these two men are those who started the company. So it amplifies the extent of Mark's betrayal, the fact that all of the other secondary people to become involved in the company did not have their shares diluted.
You signed...
And what we have here is a nice little return of the music from the beginning of the film. If we can remember Mark's jog through the streets of the Harvard campus, it echoed that sense of loss, that sense of frailty that he feels after the end of his romantic relationship with Erica Albright. Here, though, this return to that somber music, I think, is reflecting a little bit more on Eduardo's emotions and the loss of their friendship. It is grieving the actions of Mark to destroy a friendship, which essentially is what this film is about. The loss of a friendship thanks to one member of that friendship's actions. And we can see as the rest of this scene plays out, the expression on Mark's face and the way in which he responds change. There's regret, there's a realization in him now. And you'll notice that his voice breaks. Throughout the film, we've seen a confident, calculated Mark in the way that he holds himself, he speaks quickly. Here, that facade is broken down as he realizes what he has done to his friend.
You signed the papers. You set me up. You're gonna blame me because you were the business head of the company and you made a bad business deal with your own company?
It's gonna be like I'm not a part of Facebook.
It won't be like you're not a part of Facebook. You're not a part of Facebook.
My name's on the masthead.
You might want to check again.
It's because I froze the account?
You think we were gonna let you parade around in your ridiculous suits pretending you were running this company?
Sorry! My Prada's at the cleaners! Along with my hoodie and my fuck you flip-flops, you pretentious douchebag!
And here we have Eduardo keeping the focus on Mark, and you can see how it affects him. You can see how this focus on Mark, he is disregarding anything that Sean says, and Eduardo is barreling towards Mark, amplifying the loss of their friendship. Eduardo does not care about Sean, as evidenced in his aside there. Instead, the focus point is here on Mark and his regret, his realization at what he has done to his friend. Okay, boys, I hope this little breakdown has helped and that you've got some valuable film techniques to use in your analysis.